Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to your 716 Fix. My name is Billy Weltzer. I'm a senior journalism and mass communications major at St. Bonaventure University. This is the third episode of a Buffalo-based sports podcast, talking everything from Sabres to Bills to Bandits to the Buttes and anything in between. Now, I first want to go over why there was such a delay in between the second and third episode. First, it was the LeSean McCoy information about some reports that came out that I will go over while talking about the Buffalo Bills. And second, it was the trade deadline for the NHL. It was today, February 29th. And ending at 4, there were a couple moves that people expected the Buffalo Sabres to make. Some moves weren't made, some moves were. I'm going to be going over them, but that's why I waited. I just wanted to get more information. But to make up for that, I will either have another episode in later this week, I would assume Friday, Saturday, or I might do a special edition podcast. It honestly all depends on the St. Bonaventure Bonnies and how they do Wednesday night in Rochester against St. Joe's. And I would hopefully be able to preview not only the St. Louis game, but the A-10 tournament. They have clinched a top 4 seeding in the A-10 tournament. They get a double bye. That's huge. First, I want to go into the Buffalo Sabres because it was deadline day. So 4 o'clock rolled around and all the trades were in. And this is what the Buffalo Sabres did. Mike Weber was traded to the Washington Capitals for a 2017 third-round pick. And my analysis on that was I couldn't believe that we got a third-round pick for a guy that is probably not going to be on their everyday lineup. I mean, this is a depth guy that they are going to have that if someone gets hurt in the playoffs, they don't need to start calling up all these AHL guys. They have guys that have been playing in the NHL, they're ready, and they're willing to make a difference, just like Mike Weber was willing to make a difference every night with his physical play. And obviously not the best player, but it's backup for them. The next move was Jamie McGinn, which people were indifferent about, and I have my own analysis about it, but he was traded to Anaheim for a conditional third-round pick. Now, this conditional third-round pick becomes a second-round pick if the Anaheim Ducks, the team he was traded to, win 2 playoff series. That means they get out of the first round and they get out of the second round, and they make to the conference finals, I believe. And he plays in half of those games. Now, Jamie McGinn can provide some offense. He's a big body. I can see him playing more than half those games. So I think the big thing is having Anaheim win those 2 playoff series. Because when teams are, starting to figure out that these drafts are pretty deep, they aren't too willing to give out those first-round picks, even those second-round picks. So hopefully that third-round pick can turn into a second, and Buffalo can use it as they host the NHL draft this summer. And the third trade that went through the Buffalo Sabres was pretty much a Rochester Americans trade. We lost Jason Akeson, Phil Veroni, and Jerome Leduc. But we also bring in 4 guys from the Binghamton Senators, who, I should remind you, our GM, Tim Murray, for the Buffalo Sabres, was their assistant GM and the GM for the Binghamton Senators. It's one of those things where he said it was a change of scenery. I mean, we bring in Cole Schneider, who is a Williamsville native, and he's one of those players that it would be nice for him to establish himself in the AHL for a couple of years more. I'm not saying he hasn't. I'm just saying he needs to progress because he's one of those players that you're not just going to spend a year or 2 in the AHL and then you're going to be up. But having someone that's a Williamsville native is pretty big for the Buffalo Sabres. We saw it with Justin Bailey. He's, ecstatic that he can play for the Sabres. Hopefully, the Sabres never get rid of him because it would be, amazing to be a Williamsville native. Now, obviously, they weren't doing it for sentimental reasons. He's obviously a good player. But they are going to be pushing for the playoffs. And when I think of Rochester, Jason Akeson, Phil Veroni, and Jerome Leduc were more of the offensive players. Now, Jerome Leduc was a defenseman, but he was an offensive defenseman. Now, these guys weren't really helping out as much as they probably could have and taking command in the defensive zone, and that's where I really think that the Buffalo Sabres were kind of looking for. They wanted more complete players that can play in both ends. Now, for the Rochester Americans, they are 5th, Cal O'Reilly and Justin Bailey down, so they could be on the playoff roster. So I would expect Rochester to Buffalo Sabres, have the organization, have a team in the playoffs is what I'm really trying to get. So moving on from what happened today to the draft that will be. So I don't think Tim Murray's going to be using all of those picks. He talked about wanting them to be buyers, and they need to be buyers at this point. They need to start buying talent. They just can't start that they need to be buyers when it comes to the NHL draft. The trade deadline prevents anyone from making any trades until it'd be huge for the Buffalo Sabres to be buyers. Do the same thing they did last time. They brought in Ryan O'Reilly, Robin Lehner, and then they added Jack Eichel, simply because he was, part of the draft. But it was a huge draft for the Buffalo Sabres, and that's what the Sabres need. They don't need the big draft, but they need the big draft day where they're making moves. The last thing I want to go over with the Buffalo Sabres is a lot of the talk about their game against Edmonton tomorrow night. And everyone's bringing up how it's Eichel and McDavid and, how they're generational talents, how they won the draft. I read today, and it's true because they've been saying this the entire time, they're not that alike. I mean, they met each other and stuff like that, but one played juniors, one went to college. One plays on the West Coast, one plays on the East Coast. They don't really share that much. I mean, they're good players. They're probably civil with each other when they see each other, but that's it. Stop making it about these two guys like it's some huge rivalry. It is two teams looking for 2 points. Edmonton desperately needs it, and Buffalo isn't performing like they should this year. And you heard that with Tim Murray with some of his statements today. I mean, he's not exactly happy where this team is. You can see the improvement, but he wants to see it in the standings. So that's the big thing about the Buffalo Sabres game tomorrow night is don't make this the Eichel versus McDavid show. Make it the Buffalo Sabres against the Edmonton Oilers. And if they do that, the Buffalo Sabres will win because Edmonton is weak defensively. They have been for years, and that's why they're awful. So I think it's been overhyped because we heard all about it before the draft about these guys that were either going to go 1-2, and McDavid went 1 and Eichel went 2. Buffalo lost a draft lottery and stuff like that. I don't care. We got the right player for our system. McDavid would have been great, but Eichel is fine. And stop making it something it isn't, is really all I want. I don't want the entire time I'm watching this broadcast tomorrow to be talking about Eichel and McDavid. I want to watch a hockey game, not just two individuals. It's a team game, and they need to keep it that way. So I'm going to take a quick break. We'll come back talking about the Buffalo Bills and the latest of LeSean McCoy, and then we will be getting into the Bandits and the Buffalo Beauts that just finished out their season. So we'll be right back, and don't go anywhere. Second segment of your 716 Fix. This is the third episode. Please excuse me for getting choked up on the last segment. Ran out of water here in the studio, aka my room. Going to the latest on the Buffalo Bills, and honestly LeSean McCoy, because the Buffalo Bills are really just at the draft combine, and we'll talk about some of the players that they should be looking at, or some of the players that may not be coming out of the draft, but they should be looking at. But first I want to give you the latest on what I know about LeSean McCoy. Now, this isn't significant at all. I'm just making it aware that the nightclub incident was 3 weeks ago. And I'm pretty sure 2 weeks ago they were saying LeSean McCoy, there was a warrant out for his arrest. And he was going to be arrested and blah, blah, blah. And then nothing happened. He's not arrested yet. So Ian Rappaport says the Bills are preparing to play without McCoy for an extended period in the 2016 season. That doesn't sound good. It's the Bills covering their tracks, but it doesn't sound good with their faith in the LeSean McCoy case, and they shouldn't. They should be covering their tracks, and that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying the Buffalo Bills are looking ahead like, boy, we might not have this guy. Now, the Buffalo News' Vic Carucci said a source close to McCoy doesn't expect LeSean to be charged, but someone close to him could be. Now, this is one of the things where I'm going to go off on a quick tangent. There's a thing going on, I believe it was the last year or the year before, where Chris Carter and I don't want to say Keyshawn Johnson. I know Chris Carter was there, but it was someone else. And they were caught telling rookies to get a fall guy. Now, the thing about this is Joe Biscaglia of WKBW out of Buffalo said the Philadelphia DA spokesman Cameron Klein says Carucci's report is utterly wrong. He didn't say Carucci's report was utterly wrong, but the report that he wasn't going to get charged was. So is there a fall guy in place for LeSean McCoy? What's going on? Now, the facts don't need to be released to the public. There could be a lot more behind the scenes that we just don't know yet, and we will come to find them. But right now, it seems like someone told Vic Carucci from LeSean McCoy's side saying, no, he's good. And then the DA's sitting there saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. No, no, no. Don't be misled by someone talking to a reporter. So it's kind of a fine line right now. You don't know who really is going to be charged. And it's one of those things where you just have to let it play out. And that's the latest I have is one side saying he's not getting charged, the other side saying that's utterly wrong. I mean, there's many different ways this could go. But the Buffalo Bills look like they're preparing to be without him. And I don't blame them. I really don't. So even with the McCoy situation and possibly losing a running back, I still think their focus is on defense. I still think they need to get back to that all-star defense that they had, because last year really wasn't that impressive. One way they could do that is reuniting Rex Ryan with one of his former players. Antonio Cromartie of the New York Jets is now an unrestricted free agent, so I guess I shouldn't say he's from the New York Jets, but he played there last year. I understand he had a rough year last year, and I would like to clear up that he was playing alongside Darrelle Revis. I mean, this guy is, they say, one of the shut-down corners in the NFL. Now, we saw what Sammy Watkins did to him, and that was, I don't know, impressive for Sammy Watkins or embarrassing for Darrelle Revis. I'm thinking a little bit of both. But teams would not throw to Revis. So who are they going to go after? The other corner, because he's not Revis. He's going to get a lot of action. Now, you match him up with someone like Gilmore and Darby, and you have Cromartie cycling in through there. I mean, that's big. That's huge. I mean, your cornerbacks are pretty solid. Having Antonio Cromartie as, I don't even know, maybe your number 3 cornerback is huge. But the problem is, you can't sign him to a huge contract. The Buffalo Bills just don't have that kind of cap space. I was hearing veteran at minimum salary. I don't know if Cromartie's going to want to go after that. Veterans are more likely going to go after the money rather than the place they want to play. Now, I can't say this for sure because he did play for Rex Ryan, and Rex Ryan is a player's coach. Players love him. So you could see Antonio Cromartie take a pay cut just to play for the Bills. I want to make sure that people understand that's not our biggest focus. I think our biggest focus is still on that linebacker and the defensive line area, and maybe some safeties. I don't see Nigel Bradham and Preston Brown leading that. They need help, and I think a linebacker in the first round might be their way to go, and then possibly defensive end. Yeah, I'd say defensive end in the second round. I think I saw something about Joe Biscaglia saying pretty much the same thing. He's right. I mean, if you go defensive end and then linebacker 1-2, I mean, it's not going to be a problem as long as these guys can contribute and come in and really play. Now, Doug Whaley, I believe, came out and said you could find starters, through the first 4 or 5 rounds of this draft, which is big. Because having that kind of depth on your team is one of the things that I preached in my last episode. So I think the Buffalo Bills can go wrong in the draft, but I don't think they can. Stick with the defense, stick where you need a little bit more depth, especially a linebacker. And I don't think you can really go wrong once you get to the later rounds as long as you're getting good depth guys. And if those depth guys aren't like quarterback or kicker, punter, or something like that, you throw them on special teams and hopefully they can make a difference because our special teams was not all that special last year. Let's just say that. Again, another quick break. I will be right back. We're going to talk about the Buffalo Bandits, the Buffalo Beauts, and the surprising St. Bonaventure Bounties. Welcome into the third segment of your 716 Fix. Again, I'm Billy Weltzer. Going right into it, the Buffalo Bandits. They are now 5-4, and it's good enough for second in the East. But again, third straight week, and it's going to happen all season. I'm sorry, but Dane Smith. I mean, this guy, he's unbelievable. He's now blowing people out of the water. He has 33 goals and 43 assists for 76 points in 9 games. In second place, 55 points. 55 points. He is beating everyone else by 21 points. That's crazy. I mean, there's nothing else you can say. This guy is a magician. Now, I would like to bring up that it probably helps that they are very good on special teams. Now, Buffalo leads the league in special teams. I'm not going to say that they lead on the power play, but their combined really makes them effective. For their power play, they are going 51%, and that's fourth in the NLL. That's very close to the third place, but you're still in fourth. But the penalty kill is what I want to talk about. They are killing off penalties at a 65% rate, which is first, by over 10%. Now, if you have a team that doesn't have to worry as much if they get a penalty, and especially if they get a power play, they know that they can finish, especially if you have someone like Dane Smith. I mean, that's big. I mean, Buffalo could really make some runs if they keep this special teams going. And I think if you rally around someone that can facilitate that kind of offense, you can get that power play number up. When I'm talking about someone facilitating offense, obviously, Dane Smith. Now, their next game is this Saturday when they go visit Vancouver. I would like to see, actually, specifically in this game, how they do on the power play and penalty kill. I think that's big for them. I think they need to ride that out as long as they can. They are 5-4, so if things start to slip on the special teams, sometimes they can really slip throughout your entire roster and throughout your entire team. So hopefully that doesn't happen to Buffalo. And the best of luck to the Bandits and Dane Smith as he continues to tear up this league. And I'm going to move on to the Buffalo Beauts, who just finished off their first season. I've already said congratulations, but I'm going to say it again. Congratulations to the Buffalo Beauts and everyone that was involved in not only creating this team, but this league. It was such a great thing to hear that Buffalo was getting a professional women's team. That it's one of those things where the Buffalo fans just embraced it, and they loved it. And I unfortunately was not able to make a game this year, but it will be a point of mine to make it to one next year, because that's just incredible that we've finally come all this way, and we're actually giving the recognition to these athletes. I mean, they are athletes. These girls are good. So the Buffalo Beauts ended their season 5-9-4 after losing their final game to the Boston Pride. Now, that's not exactly a problem, because you're going to get another year. This is a trial run for me. This is the first year. You want to see how everyone plays. You got some systems going. People are starting to get comfortable in playing with each other. The league was starting to figure itself out. And you have if you get another draft under your belt and another offseason, it could be really beneficial to your team. I'm not going to say the Buffalo Beauts are going to, come out and be, 10-2-2 next year, but you could see some improvement. Now, the improvement I would like to see is what the Bandits are good at, is special teams. The Beauts, not so much. They went 15% on their power play and only 78% on their penalty kill. It's just not going to cut it. If you get a penalty, you got to be able to kill it off, I say over 80% of the time. I understand they're not very far off, but having penalty kill troubles doesn't exactly help when you're not having a great power play either. I think their power play really needs to get over 20%. It's one of those things where you have the man advantage, you have to take care of business there. And I think I'm not the only one that thinks this. It could have been why they lost more games than they should have. So I think the consistency on the special teams and getting another offseason under their belt and another draft and bringing in better players, I think it's going to be beneficial for them. I wish them the best in the future. Hopefully they can, have a great offseason and get prepared for the next season. But it's one of those things where we won't know until next season, but I wish them the best of luck, and I will 100% be at a game next year. My final segment is usually about Big Four basketball, but at this point, no other teams are really that much of an interest, at least to me. I understand that I go to St. Bonaventure, but St. Bonaventure is the only team that actually has a shot at making the NCAA tournament this year, unless, of course, these other teams win their conference tournaments, but I just don't see it. I don't see Buffalo Canisius or Niagara winning their tournament. I mean, they could do very well. They could even make it to the finals. You don't know. I can't see them winning, but I can see St. Bonaventure making the NCAA tournament. Now, it was a huge win this past Saturday against UMass. The final second, we thought they buzzer beated us, and they didn't. The RC was rocking. Now, let me tell you, the Riley Center had not nearly as many students as they usually do because we were on break. But the fans that came out there, they were loud, they were proud, and honestly, it was nice to see because that was my last home game I'm ever going to see. There were no students there, and it was almost just as loud. I was really impressed, and I will never forget that game just because of the support that we get from the outside community. It's something you just don't see. It was great. I loved it, and I was glad that we could win and give the fans something, in their last home game, something to cheer about. Now, it seems like the analytics of it, I guess, is going to work against St. Bonaventure. Now, all these analysts are saying that they need to win the A10 tournament, they need to win out, they need some help. I think if they can beat St. Joe's this Wednesday in Rochester, if they can beat St. Louis on the road, which isn't that impressive, but they don't lose, and if they lose, it's over. But if they can win those 2 games and at least make it to the finals of the A10 tournament, I have a tough time not seeing them getting an at-large bid. I mean, that's huge. They lose to the person that wins the A10 tournament. To me, I just can't see someone just being like, nope, that's insignificant. I have to think that St. Bonaventure is going to get the benefit of the doubt. Now, that's me being optimistic, me being realistic. I'm going to have to agree with the analysts. I mean, there's some time. We are in the top 30, I believe, or at least top 35 of the RPI. And so is that not going to help us at all when they're choosing at-large bids? It might not. And I'm just as frustrated as anyone else that if we get snubbed. But it's one of those things that you just can't help. It happens to teams every year, and St. Bonaventure might just have an unlucky year. I think this is the best chance of them going to the tournament for the next couple of years now. They have the big 3 with Jalen Adams, Marcus Posley, and Dion Wright. I wish them all the best, and hopefully they make it to the tournament. But it's going to be, it's going to be a lot. You got to beat St. Joe's, you got to beat St. Louis, and then you at least have to make the finals of the A10 tournament. They get that double bye, which is huge, but I don't want to see them get that double bye in the first game they play, they lose. So to me, it would be disappointing, but their future is in their hands as long as they can close out those final 2 games of the season and have a good showing at the A10 tournament, because we all know that Bonnie fans are going to be there. I mean, campus is going to be empty. We have a chance to make the NCAA tournament. I might be the only person left on campus. So to me, it's wishful thinking. I hope they make it, but I just can't. I can't see them making it if they lose in their first or second game of the A10 tournament, unfortunately. Well, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for me and the 3rd episode of Your 716 Fix. Again, I will be coming out with either another episode at the end of this week or a special edition. I'm not exactly sure what the special edition will be, but I will keep you posted on my Twitter page, which is at Your 716 Fix. Again, my name is Billy Weltzer, and thank you for listening.